How's it going, Q?
Very well. How are you?
Doing well, man. Collat's been going through some big changes here. You guys have a pretty cool new direction you're going. Democratized Launchpad. Let's get into it a little bit, Q. But I don't think many people on the show are familiar with you. You want to give us a quick TLDR on who you are?
Yeah, sure. I was actually there for the launch of Collat that day zero, and I'm a community member. I offered help with the team on day one. As you know, it was a big mess, just like any launch would be. But these guys are the real deal, real company. They had the proof. It's just this. You know how it is with Deegans, man. Like they'll jump on anything and they have no patience. So I helped rein in the community in the first couple of days and built up a great team of community mods. And of course we have a DAO associated with Collateral. So when you're forming a community, forming a cult, when you're building these kinds of things, then it's very important to have very consistent folks that can help elevate the community. Drawing on community members that have great knowledge, skills, and abilities in other different aspects, and bringing them all together. And so kind of initially that's where I helped out, and then we moved into sharing some ideas about how to omni-chain, how to expand, how to capture the vision, the great vision, that these folks had before they even came to Solana, before they even launched their token, all the work that they'd been doing. And, I did a lot of work in Solana dev before. And so, I got together with these guys. We lined up with the hackathon, and man, we just crunched through. And to be honest with you, man, really, for a long time, Pierre, Paul, Antoine, the team, right, and we were just on these VCs 24/7. How to improve things, how to make things better. The ecosystem, is sort of built around memes, right? So you get a lot of activity from folks in the communities. They're expecting these quick moves, right? And most people aren't even attuned to utility type tokens or tokens that give back or benefit other users or products they can bring to the table. And I got to say that good, bad, indifferent, and all the hard in between. They've been a really great team, and I'm very thankful for the relationship that we built over time to help advance the community, the token, and all of the products of the future. I mean, this is you're early, right?
Nice,
Yeah.
great
Hey
intro. Oh,
guys.
Pierre, there you go.
Yeah. I don't know. My mic was off on the computer. Yeah. Thank you, Q, for the intro. Q Holder has been a legend from the community standpoint. He really is working a lot and has been working a lot over the last months. So yeah, really, really happy to have him on the show. And good to see you guys as well.
Dude, always good to see you, Pierre. You guys have been working on some pretty cool stuff. You guys have recently come out with this launch pad, and I could read a little bit about it here. Um, let's see. So introduction, it's a bit long, but I'll kind of summarize here. It's been 8 months since we launched Collat on Solana. In the time, we've onboarded thousands of users, generated $1 million in trading volume, and seen waves of proposals for assets to be tokenized and made liquid. From all the feedback, a few things stand out. Collat is on track to becoming the simplest way to launch RWAs. Community wants decentralization. Incentives need to be strong. The next leap is clear, and that is your collateral coins. This new launch pad you guys have kind of built out. And so I think that's really going to be the main messaging we want to kind of get across today. But you guys want to start off by telling us what you guys have been working on, what you built, and what's finally been released to the public here.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so just to start, so I think we've been discussing on the show as well previously. We've been in the ICM meta for since we launched, right? So it has been a while, and obviously our goal is to put the economy, the real assets, the startups, whatever you want, on chain. That's really our goal. And we for that we need some new primitives to help people fundraise. Also, to put those assets on chain, you also need to raise the fund to create the collateral value of that. but also you need some incentives, right? So that's where we've been also working very hard with Meteora, and the different options that they provide. We built on the dynamic bonding curves, and with this new model, the collateral coin is really essentially, well, you could turn any assets into kind of like a coin that you can trade permissionlessly. You can raise funds for it and create that collateral. And then obviously the goal is to have kind of like a pretty thick liquidity pool as well, to have the asset really trading in its real value range, but also kind of like giving for issuers kind of like that extra incentives where just like on Pump or other launchpads, also giving them some incentive to tokenize the RWAs. And so what we believe could happen here is essentially also giving back the power to the issuers and creating kind of like this flywheel where when you put those assets on chain, well, you have value that is accruing for the creators, but also you have this kind of like extra mile where you could add some utility to those coins on top for the holders. So that's really the concept. And then, obviously we've been testing out with the Launchpad that we released a few days ago. Here, the goal is really to decentralize these things, right? So from there, you really want to see kind of like that scale, and having some stories from different partners that are going to be issuing assets on chain. We already have a few partners that are lined up for the launch of collateral coins. Some of them that you already had on show, so I won't reveal who, but we already have some pretty cool teams that are looking to build on what we have here. And then obviously then the goal is really to scale that and as fast as possible.
Nice. And I didn't know you guys had an app. Is this app new or has this been live?
No, it's the very first product that we put on the market when we launched. So yeah, we have already like over 6,000 users on that. And you can already, trade some Ondo tokens, or also like some other assets. So yeah, it's, we've been building tirelessly nonstop for more than 8 months. And, the goal obviously here is to kind of like bring this vision where on one side, you have this self-issuance platform where you could create your collateral coins. And then obviously the vision is to have that available directly onto the app, so that you can diversify your portfolio in just a couple clicks, and as fast as you can.
I love that. That's super cool. I'd love to hear some examples of, just to put this in perspective for people, kind of what are some stuff you guys expect to launch on here, or what's something you're excited to launch on here? You kind of made a great point at the end of this tweet, which I'll share again. You said, think Uber for assets. You're not driving a cab, you're spotting opportunities, curating them, and then plugging them in to global liquidity. Maybe give us some examples of kind of what you
Yeah.
see coming from that.
Yeah. So I mean, like what I foresee, and it's been part of the discussion that we had with the team, is that essentially what we are putting together now is kind of like a permissionless infrastructure to essentially tokenize some assets. And when I mean tokenize is raise some value, and then do stuff with that. And that, like, the range of possibility is limitless on what you could do. So you could be either looking for, I don't know, let's say you wanna build a company or around cars, right? So you're gonna be looking to raise, I would say, 150K to buy a specific car, and then lease that out. Well, you could do that with our platform, right? So you would launch your token on the Bonnie curve, like you do on any other launchpad, and then you would get that value. That value can then be used to acquire the underlying assets, and then earn from trading fees. So creating some different incentives as the owner of that asset, and then just say, okay, for example, I'll use that, and for everyone that has, let's say, 3, 5, 10% of that car, then you can rent it out for XYZ amount of time in the year. So that's really kind of like a one scenario where you would be raising to acquire some assets and to build a business, or to kind of like build an economy around the token that you're creating. And then obviously the other side of the spectrum is that let's say you have access to some assets that are really untouchable, like in a way that, for example, in art or even like real estate, some deals that are off market. And then there's significant value here, and you could definitely kind of like try to raise in like a few minutes the value to do that, and then essentially kind of like proceed to the acquisition of the underlying if it reaches kind of like that bonding target. So it's really why we call that collateral coins is really to provide a new mechanic and new incentives and a new economic model that would go way beyond kind of like the meme coin era, right? Because like one thing that Paul Antoine tweeted, and I think that's definitely one thing that I would encourage anyone to look at, is how bonding curves are essentially like used in a very simple way today. We've kind of like dissected all of that and then really went down to what is possible, stretching the mechanics. And I think Q could definitely, add some more points to that. But really, there are some very interesting mechanics around that will be live in the next few days.
So Q, you maybe want to touch on some of those mechanisms?
Yeah. So, okay, let's just take your standard Launchpad today. The ones that most people are already interacting with, and for the most part, they're meme Launchpads. So they're it's product service, right? So they're providing this the Launchpad. Users are coming there just like, oh, I want to tokenize something, and it's all emotional type trading, right? But here now we're talking about real world assets, and so this is still new even for the whole system. What you need to have a greater understanding of, and I mean as a whole DeFi system, is that by enabling permissionless minting of real world assets, you're enabling people who may not have ever had the ability to access, high grade investors or capital and things like that, to be able to envision or execute ideas. And so you're even talking about things where it could be that you're literally starting your own company right there on chain, and you're raising the capital, and all the checks and balances are in place to help facilitate the protections for your holders and your users, and following and tracking money and things like that. So some of these bonding curves that we're talking about, it's not your same bonding curve, right? We're not just cutting one formula and saying, okay, hey, this is their launchpad, everything launches like this, and this is kind of what is going to be raised. No, you're going to have different raised values. You're going to have different, issuers with different requests, where maybe it's something that they've acquired, and they could show it, right? And you get fee, revenue generation for putting it in Metaverse or displaying it at a museum or other things like that. So you really don't have a cap now.
Quick question on this, because there's a lot of nuance to RWA, right? Things need to be different. You can't just use one, as Paul pointed out here, one rigid system. How do you guys make a launch pad to where there's enough customization for people to really do whatever they want, but also keeping it frictionless enough to actually get users, right? That's because one of the benefits of Pump Fund is that it's simple. I don't have to go and customize anything, do anything. I just launch a token. Whereas something like this, we mentioned, there's more to it. How do you guys find that balance?
I'm so glad that you asked this question.
Do you want to jump on that?
Yeah. So obviously, right, you've got let's just take a home, for example, because this is, I think, one of the easier ones for people to really to relate with. The home, it's physically there in that location, and it's based upon where it's located. That determines its value. And of course, other factors involved, right? But if you have this same house in New York City and it's worth $1 million, well, that same house could be worth, $200,000 in Arizona or whatever, right? So there is a disparity already in the real world against the prices of assets and different kinds of things. So this is where oracles and on-chain pricing and all sorts of different things, AI even, right, where you can start to aggregate these things. And in a way, when you look at even Pokemon cards, for example, people collected Pokemon cards since they first came out. And it isn't really until just the last few years that people are starting to then gather these accumulations, make collections, set values, right? And so a market only exists when you have buyers that are willing to buy that, right? So we're going through still, obviously, this sort of social media experiment with DeFi as a whole, and I'm talking meme coins as well. So RWA is going to be no different in the sense that you might have a user who's willing to tokenize and sell or whatever their house for something that's undervalued, maybe something that's compared at a different location. But then there's some different opportunities to be able to provide benefits to either the holders or to the use or to the appreciation of that asset. And then conversely, on the back end, what are you doing? You're actually building a price oracle. So in the sense that this whole launchpad as a whole, for any token that does launch, no matter what its parameters, how much it's raising, what the asset is, boom, it's there on chain. It serves as now a data point for us to be able to even kind of make some predeterminations about where the market might be willing to set inside of a price range. Because again, we're not just tokenizing the asset, we're also fully liquid trading the asset 24/7. So it's basically asset squared, right? It's not just the whole asset, because tokenizing is easy. What we're considering here is that you've got the first two layers of tokenizing, LP trading, but then all the other layers, because you've unlocked all your permissionless DeFi rails with, borrowing, lending, staking, all these kinds of things. So it's not even just about the asset itself. There's still availability in the DeFi realm to handle all of the rails that exist today for everything that's built on DeFi. But then you get to add additional layers. And so, while it is new, I argue that people aren't really paying attention to the fact that this is the new push. You have an opportunity today to cement your future by starting to focus on RWA assets and how to bring those on chain, and maybe earning some passive money and fees and things like that along the way. I think it's a great opportunity for everybody.
Pierre, you wanna touch on that too?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also coming back to your question, on top of what Q just mentioned, I think, we really have been building on trying to make this as simple as possible. Because like, as we just, we see the conversation, it's really kind of like complex. And, we've been on a few podcasts and a few spaces as well, where, one of the consensus was like, there's no one single bonding curve that would solve everything, right? Because like, depending if you're a company, if you're raising capital, if you want to get some of your tokens, like there are so many different ways and use cases where you want to do your token launch, whether, no matter what the collateral is. And so what we have been working on is kind of like proving that with a very simple kind of like switcher, where you could do either flat raises, right? So you would have much less, I would say sniping incentives, but you could also have your, I would say more viral raise, where, just like on Pump Fund or other launchpads, where, the thing could just shoot up super fast. And that's kind of like the thing as well, like trying to balance out and provide the option for people to do, okay, I'm going to play it safe, or I want to be aggressive. So that's one. And then coming back to the real innovation as well that we are putting forward is like, now with this model, the collateral is locked, right? So like everything is backed by funds that are escrowed. And we use that to either acquire the assets if the raise succeeds, or the issuer can acquire the underlying assets. And or you also have this kind of like protection mechanism that, investors could get back the collateral value if the thing doesn't succeed as well. So that's kind of like an interesting point. And then, coming back to what you just mentioned as well, like Pump Fund was really focusing on meme coins. Like you had one config that was, you know, kind of like standard, and everybody just like copy pasted that with different UIs. And we really are trying to kind of like put like additional incentives and protections and, you know, extra mechanism to allow the tokenization of the economy. And that's what really our focus is today.
I have a quick question. You guys were on the show, I think, a month ago talking about Collat V2 launching, and I'm wondering kind of if this Collateral Coins is an evolution of that was kind of always planned,
Yeah.
or is this kind of key insights that you got from V2 launch that you said, all right, we need to kind of focus in on this direction?
Yeah, so it's kind of like the logical evolution. Like we branded that as collateral coins, essentially because we want to enable anyone to create their own RWAs. The thing is, like RWAs have this kind of like, I would say, maybe kind of like illiquid aspect to it,
Yeah.
which is why we believe that it didn't have like its real product market fit yet. Except, you know, I would say like public equities and like a few other highly liquid assets. And we believe that, you know, today RWAs has still not, you know, kind of like filled their promise of saying, okay, I'm just going to put my house on chain and you know, do some stuff with it. It's just really like early stage, and our goal is with kind of like opening the gates for everyone to kind of like create their own coins with liquidity and all the mechanics that we just mentioned before, was like getting this 0 to 1 moment where, okay, you're like from the standpoint that, you know, you could go from, you know, having an idea of building a project, a startup, or even like selling your house. Now you could do that if everything on chain in literally seconds, and with the like the simplicity of launching a coin on PumpUp. Maybe a little bit with a little bit more characteristics, because obviously, you know, when you're looking at tangible assets, you want just to have more than, you know, a PFP and a description. But you know, the idea is here is how can you make that easy, seamless, and also provide the good incentives for both issuers, but also people who are wanting to commit to this new industry.
Yeah, can I ask around the I don't know if you can comment specifically on any sort of asset on your platform, but we were watching the Pika launch, and it got a lot of volume and hype, and of course I think the ticker was perfect and transcended across crypto Twitter. The valuation shot to like, I don't know, something like 200 or 300K or something like that. And then I went on eBay and I was searching like actual Pikachu cards or, you know, equivalent PSAs of it. And then the valuations were very different. Like, do you see this kind of market dynamic where people might go up and try and buy up the unbought, you know, Pikachus that are circulating out of there of equivalent
Yes.
quality? Like, how do you see the market dynamic working with what's trading on chain versus what's trading in the real world?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, this coin has been highly sniped. So that's how, you know, with the collateral value being, you know, relatively low, it just went crazy high. But again, you know, that's where we see kind of like the interesting case is like you could have like literally like dozens of people who are like scraping the internet and curating their own, you know, coins, or you know, like anything that is linked to something that is tangible and that has value, and then putting that on chain. And you know, if someone would essentially like issuing those, he would probably be like making more fees from creating that RWA than just having that RWA alone, right? So that's where, you know, you have some interesting mechanism that could go. And you know, like this Pikachu is still trading, I would say, I don't have the chart right now, but probably like 10x its real world value. But it is kind of like the real the first Pikachu that was created on that launchpad, right? So you have also this kind of like interesting concept where you're putting like the first RWAs onto tradable liquid markets on Solana, and that is kind of like the crazy part.
Yeah, I read an interesting use case with Punk Strategy. I'm an ex CryptoPunk guy, and so Punk Strategy has this token that generates fees. It's like a $280 million market cap. What they do with those fees is buy a floor CryptoPunk, and then they list it for 20% higher. And when that trades, they then take that profit and then burn the underlying token, buy back and burn the underlying token.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of like a creative DeFi mechanism. And I mean, you could do
Absolutely.
something similarly here too, right? Where, you know, as Pika's trading, it's generating fees. Okay, we go out and buy the other Pika cards and then lock them into the Pika token or something like that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you know that's kind of like where I believe like the internet can go crazy because like as you say like maybe some folks are going to be sniping, you know, the punks, maybe the bored apes, and they're just gonna try to put them into those liquid markets. And on the same platform, you would also have, you know, those houses or vineyards or anything, right? And that's kind of like the interesting part is that like the mechanics that we put forward is essentially allowing you to secure the collateral funding and then get some fees from that. And then what you do with that, it is really up to the issuer, but we also have some mechanics on top.
I have a little snip I can add to this too. You know, as a regular user, seeing that the Pikachu, the success of that card, and then some of the others that we've done, and kind of diving into the future vision of it, I would look. You know, obviously the first thing somebody's going to do, they're going to go to Google and they're going to pull up these price points. They might get, you know, eBay sales or something like that, right? So this is the comparison here. You can't go on necessarily to eBay in a very efficient way to go and capture all of these Pokemon cards and then turn around to relist them, right, on the same platform. And it's hard to bite into that market. But when you're bringing the market on chain onto Solana, you are creating that automated arbitrage opportunity built right into the DeFi rails that already exists as part of the system. So what do you think is going to happen? Is it going to be that the real world is the representation or that DeFi is the representation? And again, I argue that DeFi is going to become the representation. You built your price oracle there.
And so I got an interesting thought here because when you're going to start businesses, sometimes you don't have the capital necessary. So you have to replace that capital with creativity. And in this case, you can go and start a business with zero underlying capital, raise the underlying liquidity, and then go and purchase that. And I think Josh made a great point that kind of hit it home with me here. If I wanted to start, we'll take the example you gave earlier, a car business. You know, I would get that underlying capital for a Ferrari and then all traded fees from that and use cases and renting it out could then go towards buying the next Ferrari. And then the next thing you know, I have
Absolutely.
a dealership on chain.
Absolutely. And then that's how like literally you could outpace any like existing business that is, you know, kind of like using traditional rails. 'Cause, like you get a velocity of you know money that is going much faster into Solana compared to the real world. So like the exponential factor could be absolutely amazing in those kind of scenarios.
And imagine you're an issuer. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, I would love to see a test case of this done. Like maybe even if it's the Collat team heading it up, just starting some sort of business that's, you know, high returns, cash returns, cash flow positive, and then just like growing it out through this crowdfunding and public raising. I think that'd be a great test case that maybe you guys should look into.
So again, like we have some we have some partners that are ready for launch. So that will come very fast. And you know we're like just a few days away from launching that. So you know it's really like interesting times, and I'm really excited about all of that because like it creates a whole new economy. And from my standpoint, it's really like what we said, the Uberization of like curators, right? You have some opportunities. You want to grow like a business. You could definitely do that on chain now with much faster rails than what you do in the traditional world.
Guys, that was a fantastic conversation.
Just imagine you're an issuer and you have a lot of assets already and that you wish to tokenize and add, you know, liquidity trading to. An additional benefit is, you know, pooling all those assets together and making an ETF. You know, then that makes it even more simple for your external investors. There's so much here.
Can we expect a Collat ETF in the future?
Maybe.
Redacted.
Of course,
Redacted.
Tom. We have to end
Guys.
it there, guys. But great chat, and yeah, keep us in the loop.
Definitely.
you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks for joining.
Thank
Q.
you, guys.